Michael Newcomer with Michael Newcomer Photography, and today I wanted to take you through an edit that I am trying to do on a photo that just kind of turned out okay, but it was the middle of the day. I've got this bridge here at the Neuse River Greenway up near Raleigh, and it was the middle of the day and the sky's really nothing special, but I love the beams in this photo and everything, and I wanted to turn it into something. A lot of times I have to access my artistic side because the reality just wasn't all that. So I'm going to take you through what I would do to make this photo something special and worthy of showing a friend or something like that, because right now it's not. And when I'm out, I normally shoot in brackets just because I never know if I'm going to want to do an HDR later, or maybe I want to brush in some detail or something, and I want those over and under exposures to be able to have that latitude if I need it. So for this, I do want to pick up all the detail in these shadows that sit within these pictures, but I also don't want the totally white sky either. So I am going to do an HDR on this. And in this tutorial, I'm going to use several different programs that I use. And all of these programs have gotten more and more affordable over the years. So they're not the $800 Photoshop like it used to be. So they're a lot better. So anyone can get them. And I'm just going to show you what I do. Now, I use Lightroom for my base program that has my whole catalog in it. And I've been using it mostly just as a catalog anymore because there are better, in my humble opinion, photo editing software programs that I like to use here lately. It still does fully capable. It's fantastic. I don't need to bash it if people love it, but I just like some of the other options that are out there. So anyway, I'm going to start off with Aurora HDR to combine these three images together, but I've applied a lens correction, which is one thing I love about Lightroom, and I want it to be preserved on these. So I'm going to go export Aurora HDR, but edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments so that it keeps that lens correction that I have in there. I love the lens correction profiles in Lightroom. So we'll just wait on this to cook for a minute. Okay, and here's my three images. I was using a Sigma 24 to 105 on this, which is prone to chromatic aberrations at the edges. So I'm going to do alignment, but I'm also going to tell it to remove chromatic aberration. That'll really work. And ghosting reduction, I don't need this time. There's not a lot of moving anything in it. So create HDR. Okay, here's our finished HDR image. I kind of like what it's done here. It's got all the shadows and everything like I want. Usually this is where I stop with Aurora. I just like to have Aurora do all the combining of the images, and then I like Luminar for the filters that it has in it. I mean, you can do all the editing in Aurora, and it's got fantastic tools to use and everything, but I like the way layers are handled in Aurora, or in Luminar, a little better. One thing it has though is this HDR Enhance that really brings out a lot of detail and everything. Luminar does not have this slider, so it does something a little more different than Luminar does, and you can see the effect it has on the image. And I'm kind of going for a grunge destination on this, so I kind of like what it's doing with that. So, but that's all I'm going to do in here. I'm going to apply it just to have it save it back into Lightroom for me. And I'll drop it in right next to my other ones. And from here, we're going to go and do Luminar for some color and things like that. So same thing though, this time Luminar 2018. I'm doing a copy again to preserve those lens corrections and everything. Okay, and here it is in Luminar, and what I like to do with these is just make a normal photo first before I start getting wild with it in other programs. So I'm just going to do my normal stuff here. On my first layer I've got my light, so that's all these filters are things having to do with the light. So I'm going to do some contrast, the highlights down, shadows up, check my whites. And I'm holding Option down and clicking the whites to show me where the whites are. Same with the blacks. Okay, we want some clarity. Normally I wouldn't apply clarity to the whole image, but there's not that much sky showing anyway, so I'm going to let it do that. Then we're going to boost those shadows a little bit with AI. A little smart tone also does put some light where it needs to be. And then down here a little dehaze because it is summer in North Carolina. So I'm going to put a new layer on here, and on this one I'm going to do color. And I really like the red and these rusty beams and everything, and that's what I kind of want to bring out in here. I'm not so worried about the trees and the sky right now, although you could adjust those, but I'm going to hit it with some vividness. This will all come together in the future here, you'll see. And I'm going to add some red into the shadows and midtones a little. And color contrast will brighten those beams up a little bit. You can do all kinds of wild stuff with this. I mean, hue. You want to change the hue of things. And I just kind of like what this lightning's doing a little bit here. And I'll pump up the reds under my saturation just a little. I need to turn the orange down just a little. Red up. In fact, I'm going to take the luminance of the orange down a little. And then, okay, we're good on there. And now we're going to do some detail. New layer with detail. All these filters have to do with the detail of the image. And I'm going to do some structure. I'm looking at these beams over here in this section. I want to get that rust to really come out of there. So I'm going to come down to details, enhancer, medium. You can see it's already getting a grungy look. There's our where we started. This is where we're at so far. And then I want to do some sharpening, but I want to do it independently of these other ones. So I'm just going to add another layer, detail again, and then just do some sharpening. Want to see, got to view up on sharpening to see what it is you're doing. There's off, on. Let's see, that worked pretty good. Okay. Normally my next step would be noise, but we're not going to worry too much about noise because it is a grungy image. So I'm happy with the changes where we're at so far here. Maybe one more thing. I can go back to this color one. I'm going to take down the trees are a little bit too greenish in there. Green. I'm going to take some of the yellow out too. I just want to tone down this and back to here. Okay, I'm going to say apply because I'm done making changes here, and that's going to save what we do in Luminar back into Lightroom again, right next to my other one. And the more layers you have, the longer it takes. Okay, there's our image in there. I'm going to get rid of this Aurora when we don't need it anymore. We do like to save our disk space. Okay. So next, I want to take this into, I want to do something about this sky. The sky's not that exciting, and in a step I want to do later on, I want to turn the luminance of the blues way down, but there's just not a lot of blues here to work with. So I'm going to take this into Photoshop, and I think I'm just going to pop a new sky in there real quick. And I say that like it's easy, and actually we'll edit a copy because I'm hitting Option E, which will open it in Photoshop. I'm going to edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments because I want to save this original. It looks pretty hideous right now, but we are going somewhere with this, I promise. Okay, I'm going to duplicate this background layer over here on the right, and I'm going to shut that off. And now with the magic wand, I'm going to teach Photoshop what it is I'm looking for in here. And I click the first time, you can see it pick those up. I'm going to continue to hold shift and click anywhere I want it to select. And teach Photoshop what I'm trying to select. The reason being is I'm going to select a mask here in a minute, and it needs to know these things. Yeah, that's pretty good. And as you can see, it's more of an art than a science, that's for sure. So you can see I kind of missed a lot up here, so I'm going to grab an, my lasso tool, hold shift down, and kind of circle to include these in my selection. And I'm going to let select and mask do that heavy lifting. So up here on the top is our select and mask tool. You got to make sure you're on a selection tool. It can be magic wand or lasso or whatever you want. But select and mask, and that's showing you what's selected so far, the sky and everything. As you can see, I gotta kind of take a better look at what I'm doing here. Okay, I think we did pretty good on our selection, but I'm just gonna, and as you can see, my settings over here, I've got a brush. You can bracket, left bracket makes it smaller, right bracket on the keyboard makes it bigger. Just teaching it that I want these other things selected. There's some trees in there. Remember before when I was telling you we were showing Photoshop what to select? See, I went over the edge a little bit, so I'm going to hold Option. Option takes away, Shift adds. Let's see how we did so far. One thing I always do too in here is just some blue showing through over here in these trees, so I'm going to do that. Okay, it's just delete to see where you're at and how you did. Because sometimes, see, there's a little bit up in the top, so we just step back. So let's go back. I got no short-term memory, I got to tell you. Just bear with me on that, because it's life being 50, you know. I use my history a lot because I am definitely not infallible. Okay, so that looks like it got rid of our sky pretty good, so I'm going to deselect. And I just hit delete to clear out the sky is what I did before. So now we got a sky I've opened up over here already. All I'm going to do is drag this layer right into the other image using the move tool. And I'm going to Command T for transform so I can stretch it. And then double click accepts the change, and then drop it behind that other layer. And as you can see, we've got a new sky in there. And I'm still clicked on my sky layer over here so I can make adjustments. I want to kind of get more of that blue to show in there, but you can't get too high. If you want to adjust it again, you hit Command T again, and you can see you can put it anywhere you want. Double click. You know what? You can see up here I got some white there I'm gonna have to get rid of. So magic wand. Just clicked it with the magic wand and pushed delete. Same over here. Some of these things are getting pretty intricate. So I'm going to deselect. When all else fails, eraser tool. View up on it a little bit. Just clean up. You know, when you replace skies and you do those things, you got to sell the fake. Like I say, back to the art part, right? Okay, there's that one. That one. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay. So now we have that, and I'm going to save it. Pardon me, back into Lightroom. Just flatten the image, discard our layers, hidden layers, because it's just that background one we don't want anyway. And then Command S to save, and it's back in Lightroom. Okay, there's our new one right next to the other one. Okay, from here, I am going to take this into Luminar as a standalone program because from there, I need to get to Topaz Studio, which you can't get through the Lightroom plugin of Luminar. So anyway, you'll find that out if you ever go this route. So I'm just going to drag the picture into Luminar. The reason I'm going through Luminar instead of directly into Topaz is because if I'm in Topaz and I want to save it back to Luminar, it's going to save the Topaz adjustment on its own layer, and then I can mask and things from there. So it's nice to have that option. Here lately I've been using using Topaz almost exclusively, but you never know if you're going to need that safety net. So I've got a couple presets I like to use in Luminar just to get us started, and one of them is Bloody Mary in yellow. And Bloody Mary is a built-in preset with Luminar that comes with it, but I changed it and saved my own because I kept a little bit of the yellow hue over here into it. But presets are nice because it's a starting point, and then you can make all the adjustments over here if you want to change from what the factory defaults were for it. So I don't really need the yellow this time. And as you can see, the only thing that's saturated is the red beams in this, but I want to put a little green of the trees back in. And remember me earlier saying I wanted to turn the luminance of the blue down, so I'm going to go to my luminance and I'm going to turn that blue all the way down. And see, it kind of gives an otherworldly appearance here. And I want to maybe add just a little bit of blue back in there, give it a steel blue look. Okay, so there's that. And now I kind of like where this is, so I'm going to save it. Well, actually, I'm going to export. Save it, makes it a Luminar file format, which is nice for some things, but I want to save this picture for where we're at so far. So I'm going to say grunge. Bridge. And I've got a folder already picked out. I like 300 DPI, so that's good. Anyway, if I ever have to screw up so badly I have to come back to this point, I can at least do it. Okay, so from here we're going into plugins, Topaz Studio, because there's some effects over there I want to do on it. This just pops it right open. Okay, what I've learned, Topaz Studio, I'm kind of in a learning curve on that right now. I haven't been using it very long, and it does handle layers differently than Photoshop and Luminar does. So I learned the hard way that you always want to duplicate your first layer, because whatever you change is going to go right on that base layer. So it's the old Photoshop rule of always duplicate that layer. So here I am, I'm going to do a couple of my effects on here. And I've got, just to show you, you can have all these categories of effects. I have some favorite ones. I have some ones that I've liked in there. And I've got my effects that I've made and saved. But you can always get to public effects, which are people make effects and save them. It's like an open source kind of thing. And this is where I found most of my inspiration here lately, is these are all from people that have just made effects, and you can apply any one to your image. And you can really, the possibilities are endless, and people are so creative. But I have one for this. It's in my favorites. I want to try. We're going to go with Brilliant Fibers. And as you can see, that's pretty wild. The nice thing about Topaz Studio is you don't have to use this wild, this whole wild effect. You can bring down the opacity to be just as much or as little as you want. So for this, the only thing I wanted out of this whole thing was the sky. See what it's kind of doing to the sky up there? So I don't want to do all this to the whole image, so I'm going to use a mask to do this. So I'm going to go up to Tools, Mask, and remember, white reveals, black conceals. So right now it's revealing all of this effect over the whole image. So I don't want it to do that. I want to invert the mask, and it's going to hide the effect over the whole image. And I'm just going to brush it in where I need it to be, which is just in the sky up here. So I want to paint with a white brush because on a black it's going to reveal wherever I paint. And I've got my edge wear on, which means if I go over the edges it'll forgive me. And adjust my brush size and just start painting in where I want this effect to be. And see, I went over a little bit in the trees there, and you'll just reverse the mask to put that back. Okay. And you know, I had some edges there that were pretty wild from where I did the kind of along those beams and everything, but I knew that this effect would kind of conceal that a little bit. There, went over a little bit. And that works pretty good. So now we've got like an otherworldly thing. And if you get to the end of doing your mask and you decide that's still too much or too little, you can always adjust the opacity slider. Okay, and I'm going to hit apply. That's going to save those changes and give me a new layer that is empty over here where I can do new adjustments or presets that I want to do on here. And I do have another one I want to do. It's in my favorites. You know, as you go through the public ones and you see ones you really like, you can either like it or hit the little heart button and it'll drop it into these folders for you so you can always find them easily. And I have one here called Church Graveyard. And I really like what that does to the beams of the image. This is why I gave it all that extra structure and detail in the previous program, is because it gave more to work with for this effect. So everything builds on each other like building blocks. So, and as you can see, I don't want that all over the image, so I'm going to do another mask. This time I am going to use white. I'm going to use a black brush because I'm going to conceal it from areas I don't want it to show through. So like, I kind of like what our skies were before. So I'm going to maybe not use like a sledgehammer for surgery. The other thing is I can't use my bracket keys to change the size of my brush in this, but oh well. Okay, so that worked. That's what we wanted. A little smoother on the sky there. Did I do this one? I guess not. Okay, so that worked. Done. I kind of like where that's headed. Okay, so I'm going to apply that to save those changes. And you can see what it's doing down here at the bottom. It's giving me stepping stones backward in time. In case something really wacky happens here, I can just delete it and go back. So now I want to do something with the edge exposure on this thing. So kind of give it a vignette kind of a look. So I'm going to do edge exposure. And over here, anything in blue are effects that I have and I either came free with Topaz or I've purchased. Anything in black you can do a free 30-day trial on, but some of them are kind of pricey and didn't excite me that much, and maybe they will in the future, but I have not purchased everything. And they are kind of expensive if you try to purchase everything at once. But for this one I'm going to do edge exposure, which I like more than vignette because you can control each side individually. Like I'm just doing the left side over there. Now the right side, and the top just a little, bottom a little more, make the side a little. And then you can always go back to each one and do it, make your micro adjustments, kind of like where this is heading. How about this right side? We kind of direct people's eyes to that center opening, like that. Like, look this way, look this way. Okay, I like that. I'm going to apply it. It gives me a new layer here. And I kind of like, I want to save this from inside Topaz, so you have to have your file name in order to keep your filing structure like organized. So here it is, 1242 is the number. And 2018, July, MDN, 42. We're going to call this Grunge Bridge 1. I want it to be a TIFF in case I have to do stuff to it later on. I'm going to tell it which folder to be in. I'm going to hit OK. And I like to save at this point because I'm going to do other things to it. So I'm going to duplicate this because I got a frame picked out for it I want to use. And I've got it saved in my favorites. Now I could go over here and just do digital frame. And that way you can go through here and pick out what frame and mat you want on everything and make those adjustments. But in order to save time, I've already got one saved. So, and my effects are effects that I've done and made. Here we go. Reds and blues. And I made this frame originally for a vertical image, so everything's a little off. So anything you do over here, the things that make it appear over here, and you can make adjustments to it provided you've purchased or that effect came free. So I'm just going to go frame size. A little more. Okay, with the depth. Shadow size. Strength. You can adjust all the shadows and everything to it. What about that frame detail? Frame detail. Contrast. Okay, I like where that's at. So I'm going to save as digital frame. 1242 we said, right? I have such a short-term memory deal here. 1242. TIFF. Okay, so that did that, but now I want to do something different. I want to do a crop for Instagram, which, as you know, is going to be a square. So this frame won't work, so I'm going to get rid of it. My edge exposure that I did before won't work because once I make it a square, that's going to change. Did edge exposure, don't say. And now I'm back to where I was before I added that edge exposure. So I'm going to duplicate that, crop. It's a 1-to-1. Put that right in the center. Done. I'm just duplicating just because I'm paranoid something's going to happen. Actually, don't save. Let's apply instead. Okay. Now we've got our edge exposure we can do on this one, just like we did on the other one. A little more on that side, bottom, even more. Apply. Okay, and now we'll just add that same digital frame. So I've got my effects. Okay, well, there you go. That's how you make a so-so picture into something decent. Like, just to show you where we started out was these three brackets. Then we went to this one, which was still kind of so-so. Then we went to this one after we replaced the sky and everything. And then we ended up with that one. Much more compelling image. So I hope that helped everybody. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments below. And I'll see you next time. Bye.